us about UNCCLA and what it is all about.
Thank you very much. Good evening, our viewers, dear viewers. UNCCLA Listens and Speaks Series 71. We are happy to be with you tonight. And basically today what we are going to share with you is a historical foundation of how UNCCLA has come to be. And before we start off, it is in order that we always begin with prayer. Yes, I think let's have a short word of prayer. Okay. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Loving Father, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for the gift of the church. We thank you for the gift of our faith. Today evening, as we discuss the history, the foundation of UNCCLA, may your Spirit be the guardian and the guide. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. Holy Uganda matters. Pray for us. Holy Uganda matters. Pray for us. Holy Uganda matters. Pray for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you very much. Today, as Madam Coordinator have introduced us, we are discussing the foundation or the historical perspective of UNCCLA. And your first question to us was, what is UNCCLA all about, or what is UNCCLA?
I need my viewer out there to know
yes. What you're talking about. UNCCLA is a short, or is the abbreviated aspect of Uganda National Catholic Council of the Lay Apostolate. So this is the body that brings together all the laity in Uganda. That's why it's Uganda National. And it's the Council of the Lay Apostolate. Yes. Today, everybody is talking about UNCCLA, but it has a history. It's quite a very rich history. And that's what we have come basically to share with the people. And the history of UNCCLA is basically the history of the lay apostolate in Uganda.
So before we get that far,
yes.
UNCCLA and all the history it comes along with, when was it founded and what exactly led to the foundation of UNCCLA?
And that's what we are going to try to. Along the history, then UNCCLA will appear. Oh. Yes. So, dear viewers, once again, welcome you. When you talk about UNCCLA, the historical perspective, we have to go back to the time of the missionaries when they have just come here in Uganda. And basically, our sharing is going to be in 3 phases. There is what we call the era of the Uganda Martyrs. And then we have what we call the era of the Catholic chiefs. And finally, the UNCCLA we see today.
Okay.
But its strength and its strong foundation is way back in 1880s when we had the Uganda Martyrs. Dear viewers, you take note of the fact that in 1882, the Catholic missionaries came in Uganda in 1879. That is Simon Lodell, Brother Amans, and their colleagues, or confrères. But in 1882, due to some political reasons, the missionaries went into exile from Buganda then into current Tanganyika, current Tanzania. But of course, that time it was
Tanganyika.
It was not even Tanganyika. It was whatever it was. Anyway, so when they went, the Catholic faith was hardly 3 years, 4 years here. But they had got already catechumens. And the few Catholics that were available came together in the absence of the missionaries. They said, now the missionaries are out of the country. What do we do? So they made sure they come together and they shared a number of things. And one of the key issues that arose then was that as soon as the missionaries went out of the country, what we would call the first pastoral council sat. I wouldn't call it a parish pastoral council, but it was a pastoral council. And here were the few Catholics in the country then, and they agreed upon certain principles, and they resolved over certain important issues that were to define the Catholic Church in Uganda. Now that's why we are talking about UNCCLA, lay apostolate, coming all the way from its infancy. Now, one of the resolutions was we are hardly 300 Catholics baptized, but we have to make sure that everyone remains strong in the faith. That was one of the resolutions. Second resolution was we, few as we are, without even a priest among ourselves, we are going to try our level best to spread the Catholic faith
And have more people
and
join
more
it.
people join from the current villages and from the current kingdom to even our neighboring kingdoms. That was the second resolution. It was quite a very important one. Then number 3, they resolved that no single catechumen would die unbaptized, much as there was no priest. So whoever had already embraced
Catholicism.
the faith was going to help another to make sure that at least nobody dies without being ordained, rather baptized. And then number 4, they resolved that within themselves, they'll be picking someone who will always be, or some group of people, who will be going to the missionaries over the lake down to Tanganyika. They get the instruction, they bring it back to their fellow catechumens. So those were very, very, very important resolutions. With the church had 4 years in Uganda. And why we are saying that this was this foundation of UNCCLA, the lay apostolate, because one of the mandates of the UNCCLA or the lay apostolate is to spread the faith. We've received something quite very important, so we are ready to share it with others. So this was so much a strong group of lay people, to the extent that when the missionaries returned from exile, they couldn't imagine what had taken place. It was a miracle.
So, Mr. Vice President,
Yes.
it's right there that I want to pick it up from. When you
Yes.
said you mentioned earlier that there were no priests among them, they were just lay people.
Yes.
So I'm curious to know how, and I'm so sure that a viewer out there is curious to know how they managed, few as they were, and considering that the faith was still young,
Yes.
it was actually it was still in the early stages of
It's infancy.
Yeah, it was still a child, I may say,
Yes.
in amongst people.
Yes.
So I'm curious to know some of the ways in which they were able to, keep it firm and have more people join the faith and not necessarily feel like the people that had brought it were no longer in position to almost support it because they were in exile. So how did these people manage to sustain it and even have more people join the faith and over time have more Catholics and, the community grow?
Yeah. What we know about the era of the Uganda martyrs, as we call it, is that there was a lot of conviction over matters of faith, such that whoever embraced the faith, one, it took 2 years, solid years, for anyone to be baptized then. They were elders, they were already old. So whoever embraced the faith made sure that it's beyond even conviction. One, they had to learn. And in fact, the first group of the Laity were called the Abasomi, they had to learn to read. That was number 1. But at the same time, there was real conviction and the grace of the Lord was at work. That's what we can say. So this was such a small community of lay people. But the missionaries had built within them the fact that everybody is supposed to be sharing the faith with another, because what you have embraced is good. So it's worth that we share it with others.
True.
So that is how that small group came to be what it was. And as I was saying, the miracle that was embraced by the missionaries when they came back from exile, they couldn't imagine it.
They couldn't.
They had left 300 baptized people only. Now here was a flock without a priest among them. But they found 8,000 within 2 years, 3 years. 8,000 catechumens ready to be baptized. It was quite a very big miracle. Yes. And that was a sign of the strength of the laity, if properly formed in their faith. Once you form the laity properly, and there's that conviction, then the rest, the grace of the Lord will do its work. you can't leave 300 without a
priest.
priest amongst them, newly embraced. And here within 3 years, you find 8,000. And even they had given their report that whoever they saw that was in danger of death, they baptized. So the missionaries were really, really, really very happy about it because of the strength of the laity. Now, this was going to be even more manifested following the persecution and the martyrdom in Uganda. Here we are in the court of the Kabaka. To the viewers, you'll excuse me, by and large, the first history of the Catholic Church in Uganda is centered in the era of the White Fathers. So the Middle Hill Fathers came in later on in 1898. The Verona Fathers who did the evangelization in northern Uganda came in 19-something, early 19-something, 1910. So when we are talking about the apostolate in Uganda, we have to go back to the era of the White Fathers, 1879 plus. So the laity were within the court of Kabaka, of the king. And there was a sense of leadership. We find that St. Joseph Balikudembe is leading the others. In fact, we sometimes call him the first Sabbath priest of Uganda. Here he is in the court. They are helping others to embrace the faith, to play the role. They are playing the role of being within the court as politicians, but at the same time, they are not forgetting the fact that they are remaining Catholics and they had to adhere to their faith. So what happens? We find that according to the church and to the mandate of the lay apostolate, to evangelize the world, to be the light to the world. We find people like St. Joseph Mukasavali Kodembe telling the king, you are not supposed to kill Bishop Hannington. It is wrong. So the later becoming the conscious of the nation, the conscious to the kings even, the politicians, to the extent that they can tell a king, it is wrong to do this. It is wrong to do this. Now, those are the infant stages of the lay apostolate in Uganda. Of course, that admonition to the king led to the martyrdom of St. Balikudembe, Joseph Mukasa Balikudembe. Nonetheless, because the faith had grown and they were always together, moving together, St. Charles Lwanga comes in as now the new leader, of the Catholics within court, and is one of the garant soldiers who was able to mobilize always these young men, the young pages within the court. Now, something important still happens in court. One of the reasons why the Uganda martyrs were killed was concerning some immoral behavior within the court of the Kabaka then. And that was gay or homosexuality. And now here is their leader, St. Charles Lwanga, helping the young martyrs, the young pages, guiding them to say no to the wishes of the Kabaka, the immoral wishes of the Kabaka. And of course, even the king was very bitter about it. How can even these young pages say no to me?
Yeah, that's true.
Now, question today is, how many of us, even as Catholic leaders, are ready to stand before the politicians and say, this is wrong. This is immoral. So that's where UNCCLA starts from, our mandate. Yes.
Oh. So when actually you speak about the matters,
yes,
and UNCCLA, of course now there comes a lot for us to learn from, let's say, the matters.
Yes.
For example, they stood so strong on their grounds and they were like, matters, this is the king, and the timings and the norms and things to do with culture then were like, when the king says something, that's the final thing. You don't have to question anything about it. So looking at these matters standing so firmly and strongly on their grounds, and they're like, this is not correct, this is not right as regards the faith we believe in. So how do you think that in the recent times, like today, how do you think Catholics and people that are trying to continue to build onto this work and ensure that Catholics stay strong and of course have more people join the faith, how do you think they would emulate or draw a leaf or a picture from how strong the martyrs were to stand on their grounds and they're like, you know what, much as this is the king, we are not accepting this?
Oh, thanks very much for that. Our dear viewers and listeners, the foundation laid by the Uganda martyrs is the true example of what we are supposed to live today. Fortunately, we are having this talk when we are celebrating 60 years since the canonization of the Uganda martyrs. They are our examples in faith that irrespective of your vocation, whether you are a religious, whether you are a priest, whether even you are a member of the laity, the baptism that we received
Makes us priests.
exactly, but it's not even about the priesthood, the baptismal priesthood. The demand to the laity, the call to holiness to the priest is the same call to holiness to the laity.
Yeah,
so there's nothing like, the priests are supposed to be very, very, very holy, we the laity are not supposed to be. So the Uganda martyrs today are a true example of what it meant for the laity, one, to be convinced of their faith, two, to stand on their moral ground and say, this is what we are expected to do, and even we are supposed to be the conscious of the country, the conscious of the politicians. So that era of the Uganda martyrs did a lot of impact, generally, not only in Uganda, but generally Africa. And everybody was saying, where is that?
People.
What is that? Within just a few years, hardly 6 years of embracing the faith, 7 years. And these are people who are ready to die for their faith. So we see them as leaders. How many of us are ready to participate as leaders? That's a very big issue today when it comes to leadership. We're in leadership possibly for certain interests and other things. So as the laity are being formed, there's a progress throughout all the 1880s, and of course 1890s had issues of geopolitical wars. But at least we could see that the laity then were strong and could easily identify themselves with the church. And they could fight for their church, and they were ready to spread the faith. So eventually, from the era of the Uganda martyrs, we come to the era of the Catholic chiefs. And that is between 1900 and come to we could able to say 1930s. We see Catholic chiefs coming out, very strong wherever they were. And they were there for the church. Now that is the era of chiefs like Stanislaus Mugwanya. Those were the eras of chiefs like Alex Sebowa. They are both in the administration of the kingdoms, but at the same time, they are seen as Catholic leaders. And they were there for the church. For example, very many people claim today the Catholic Church has got a lot of land, blah, 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 blah. But it was courtesy of these chiefs. They donated a lot of land to the church. Go to Chisubi, we are having St. Mary's College, Chisubi Seminary, Chisubi what, Joseph, St. what. It was donated to us by the chiefs. Go down to Masaka, Katigondo, where Katigondo Seminary is, Bukarasa Seminary is, Buanda, and all those parishes, all that land was donated by the chiefs.
In support of the faith.
In support of the faith. And the principle was, wherever there is a church, there must be a school, there must be a hospital.
Yeah, true.
So when the chiefs were donating this land, and they were also persuading others to give to the church, they were always telling the people, please, we need the faith, we need education, and we need a healthy nation. So, but principally, they were being led by the Catholic chiefs. And that's how UNCCLA slowly but surely is coming up.
Getting established.
How far are we when it comes to education? Of course, we are being proud of the Catholics have got very many schools, beautiful schools, standard schools. But how many even are still willing even
to start more?
To start more more schools, and even to stand when they are taking away the PTCs and everything. How many of us are ready to stand up? Because that's the mandate of UNCCLA, as the lay apostolate. Where the priests are not supposed to fight, we are the ones who are supposed to be there for the cause of our faith. So, before we finish, the era of the chiefs, Catholic chiefs. So there was always a liaison between the missionaries and the laity. Where do you want to have the school? What's the next priority? In actual fact, viewers may not be aware, when the 1900 agreement was going to be signed, the colonials came to the local chiefs and asked them, what are you bargaining for in the agreement? The Catholic chiefs went back to their missionaries. They asked them, what should we bargain for?
Oh, really?
The missionaries told them, bargain for land. And there must be evidence that this is our land with the land title. And that's how the issue of land titles came into being. The Catholic was so serious when it came to issues of the land. And the local chiefs were always involved, and they mobilized the people to start the schools. And that's how the apostolate started growing further, further, and further. So when the missionaries, the bishops, were starting the minor seminary in Bukalas, they thought that it would be impossible. But when you read the history of the Catholic priesthood in Uganda, close to almost 80% of all the first candidates in the seminary were seconded by the chiefs. The growth of vocations, vocation animation. When you go to Uganda and you go through the archives, all the first girls who joined religious life for the first 8 years were seconded by chiefs. Because here, tradition in Uganda, the families were supposed to give to the king who was supposed to serve the king. So, principally, even when they brought that to the Catholic religion, the laity saw it as their duty and mandate to look for vocations among the people who would serve the King of Kings by joining the priesthood and the religious life. So that's how we see the church growing steadily, and especially through education. Namiryango College was basically between missionaries and the local chiefs. SMAC, St. Mary's College, Subi, Bokumi in Hoima. It was still the laity, the chiefs, together with the missionaries. So wherever they were establishing a school, the laity were coming in. And they had to make sure that they convinced the people that please take the children to the schools. Health and hygiene, quite very important. We may neglect that aspect. We'll give an example. Here in Buganda, it was the local chiefs who held the campaign for sanitation within all homes. And we see Stanislas Mugwanya moving house to house, telling all the Catholics, please, we need a healthy family, Catholic family. Where are your toilets? And that's how the pit latrine became widespread all over Buganda. And it became to be known as Ebinya bya Mugwanya. Mugwanya's pit. Because the local chiefs were saying,
you need to have a latrine.
You need a latrine. You need a katandalo where you would put your things.
And then, of course, they had things like cleaning their water sources.
Exactly. Education, faith, all these things had to move together. They had to move together, but under the mobilization of the laity and the lay apostolate. So it came up, and it was a subject of discussion every Sunday. When the people came to worship, then they would ask, who doesn't have a toilet at home? Are you taking your children to school? Now that's the laity playing their role. So slowly but surely, as the era of the Catholic chiefs was waning, it brought in what we call, that is in the 1940s, what we call Ugandan National Catholic Council, Uganda National Catholic Council, Catholic Action, Lay Action. You see, Uganda National Catholic Lay Action. It's not yet UNCCLA. It is UNCCLA in abbreviation, but it was action then. But today it is now apostolate.
Oh.
That is the 1940s. So we shall see, how did we move from action to apostolate as we know it today? Yes. So in the 1940s, all over Europe, Catholic action was very active. Everywhere there was Catholic action, Catholic action, Catholic action. Unfortunately, it came to have some bit of political connotation because Catholic parties, political parties in Europe were called Action, Catholic Action something. And they were talking about democracy and freedom. So when the word Catholic Action came here, the colonials thought, now it's the Catholics who are going to uprise and bring in a Catholic leadership, everything. So slowly from action, we came to apostolate. Nonetheless, 1940s, the late apostolate was quite very, very active. And by that time, what was Kampala Diocese then, under the Mill Hill Fathers, the White Fathers here under Lubaga Archdiocese, and also the northern part of Uganda under the Verona. Now, every area of Uganda had been evangelized. And there was some relative literacy within all these regions. So the Catholics felt the urge to be together. And many of them formed associations, especially based on their former schools. So the Namiryango Obizi would find an action, the Smarkists would find an action, then Tororo St. Peter's would find an action, then Laity in northern Uganda they would find an action. So eventually the Catholic apostolate was quite very strong. And all over Africa, it was the same story.
Oh.
It was the same story. And the fortunate part of it, even in Europe, it was the same story. And one of the most important person whom we owe a lot here in Uganda when it comes to the lay Catholic apostolate growing was none other than currently Saint Paul VI. But by then he was not yet Pope. By then he was still an Archbishop, and was the Archbishop of Milan. So he was very active in mobilizing, and is one of the key persons who requested that Africa hosts the Second World Catholic Action Congress. And the fortunate part of it is it took place here in Uganda, the first World or African Catholic Congress on lay apostolate.
So, Mr.
Yes.
Anthony, what you've spoken like over time as the lay apostolate has been growing in Uganda particularly,
Yes.
we cannot shy off the fact that the lay people did a lot of great work towards the faith, especially the Catholic faith.
Quite very so.
Yeah, so I'm curious to know lately or in the recent times, what are the lay people doing? What exactly are they doing to continue to support and work towards growing the faith much more than they did in those times?
Well, different times have different dictates and different circumstances. When the Catholic action was still very active then, in church, the church was being defined more as religious and the priests. Come the 1960s, under Vatican Council II, the role of the laity was more pronounced. It didn't mean that the laity, that their role was not there, but it became more pronounced. And following Vatican Council II, you'll be very keen, and the word people of God comes out very, very many times.
A lot.
Yeah, than ever before. As I said before, the church was being defined as priests and the religious. And the laity, much as they were very active in there, but it was always, we are waiting for the priest. We are waiting for the priest. Now come the 1960s, most of many countries in Africa are getting their independence. There is a lot of changes within the church following the Vatican Council II. Now, the role of the laity now is becoming more pronounced. More pronounced.
In terms of what? What exactly?
Now, from the council itself, the council fathers urged the laity to participate fully in the world, and I'm putting the word in quotes. We are supposed to be responsible for the economics of the world as laity. We are supposed to be responsible for the politics of the world. Whenever politics goes wrong,
It's us to blame.
yes, the laity, the role of the priest, fine, he give us the he direct the conscience, but the active participation into politics is the role of the laity. And whenever we go back in the background and we hide ourselves, things go bad.
We're
Things go
literally
wrong.
failing the church.
Exactly. So today we'd be asking ourselves, where are the Benedicto Chiwanukas of today
Exactly.
who are ready to stand up and pronounce themselves? God forbid. I don't know if there is a motion coming here in Parliament concerning abortion, and the Catholic leaders came up, how many would be ready to follow us behind?
And be like, this is not right.
No,
as per the church.
morally this is wrong. Not even by the church. Morally wrong from the word go. Life is life.
Yes, that's
Now,
true.
so what you're calling us upon is, how do the lay apostolate, how do the laity come out more pronounced today to play their role in the church and in the world? We are supposed to play our role in the world. We are the ones who are supposed to bring the salt, the light into the world. But unfortunately, in one way or another, we find ourselves hiding our heads under the sun.
But again,
Yes.
Mr. Anthony, when you say that you find people sitting back and hiding their heads under the sun,
Yes.
under the sand, I don't think it's just because they want. There are certain things that are hard to confront and, you know, just stand and be like, this is, okay, there is so much that is going on that people are not so sure of what is coming up next the moment they take a certain step. So how could you address such an issue?
Well, I wouldn't, sometimes your question sounds a bit political or what otherwise, but the Catholic Church stands for certain values. And the fortunate part of it is, very fortunate, our values don't run contrary to any other people's faith. Nobody has ever said that. That value of the Catholic Church, it's not in order. Protection of life, protection of the environment, and other issues.
That benefits us
It
all,
benefits us all.
regardless
And
of
the Catholic
faith.
Church comes out more pronounced about it. In actual fact, today, I wouldn't say that we are hiding per se. Very many people say, when will the Catholic Church speak? Because they're expecting us that we are the ones to speak. But now I think what we are being called upon today as the laity, we are forming 99.9999% of the church, of the Catholic Church. That means our voice is supposed to come out more.
It's supposed to be louder.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever injustice that goes on, we are the ones who have the Catholic lawyers, the Catholic judges, the Catholic everything, the Catholic people in the revenue authority, the Catholic whatever. Where is our moral compass that's supposed to come out? Now, that's what we are doing as UNCCLA, the Catholic Council of the Lay Apostolate. To pronounce ourselves, we give guidance. We try to be the mouth of all our fellow brothers and sisters out there.
To be the voice of...
The voice of the voiceless, exactly. But that doesn't mean that when I'm the voice, the others should not speak.
No.
So slowly but surely, we want to build upon this. And that's what our bishops are calling upon us. Please, you're the laity. You're responsible for the politics. Where are you? You come to the politics, election time, you look for the Catholics, they are the majority, and they are nowhere. Then you wonder, what's happening or what's not happening?
Yeah.
Bring in your moral values. Possibly that's what will change our country into a better. If it is good, then it will be better. If it's bad, possibly it will become good. So from this, UNCCLA is calling upon, the lay apostolate leadership is calling upon all the Catholics and people of goodwill, please join the politics and bring in the salt and be the source of light, even in the economy of the country. Because the Vatican Council says, Vatican Council 2, the mandate of politics, economics, health and sciences belongs to the laity. Belongs to the laity. So we want to use these platforms to build this higher, higher, and higher. And that's the mandate of the UNCCLA, the Catholic Council of the Lay Apostolate. And this doesn't exclude even the youth, because there's that tendency of, we are the church of tomorrow. You are the church of today. Hey, when will the tomorrow come? The martyrs did their part. Correct. The Catholic chiefs did their part. What are we doing today? When you look at the topics that were discussed in the African Congress here in Uganda in 1952, it was at Subi Seminary. Subi Seminary had just been built, newly, a brand new seminary, if I am to use the word. The best buildings in East and Central Africa. And that's where the Congress sat. In actual fact, Subi Seminary is going to celebrate 75 years since it was founded. And it was the same year the Congress sat there. But if you look at the topics that were discussed in that Congress by all the leaders, world leaders came here for Catholic action. They are as if they are prophetic in nature. One, they are asking, what is the role of the Catholic in independent Africa? Independent Africa. Is the Catholic prepared to be in positions of responsibility?
To sustain their countries.
Exactly. That was one question. Number two question, which we couldn't think about even then. And when we were reading through their documents, we said, wow, this was so prophetic. Is the environment sustainable in the future? Imagine the 1950s, when nobody thought about the environment. Today we are shouting environment, environment, environment.
Plant
But
trees,
this was
plant
what,
trees, but
exactly.
this was predicted very
Now
many
this
years
was one of the key issues that was debated within that Congress by the Laity, the International Congress. You see, is the world environment sustainable in the future? Number three, how are we handling scientific research as Laity? I don't know these viruses that are being manufactured, if it's correct, and other issues. Something that we didn't think about then. I think it was resolution number 4 in that Congress, discussed by the Laity, was, how is the church going to embrace technology? That was 1950s.
Wow.
Now here we are.
Technology has
Technology
come.
all over. I don't know whether we are the ones who are running after the technology. It's all technology. But imagine 1950. So these were key issues that were brought forward to the people and say, go back and discuss.
So, Mr. Vice President, as we conclude, we are speaking about UNCCLA. So I'm curious to know, in the recent times, what are some of those things UNCCLA is doing to maybe sort of mobilize or maybe awaken people's minds towards their call, or even remind them and things like that? What are some of those activities that UNCCLA is maybe
involved
doing?
in? Thank you very much. 1980s had a lot of turmoil in Uganda, and UNCCLA was a bit down. It has been resurrected, and that's why I'm even able to speak about it. Duty number one, to remobilize all the dioceses back to life, the laity to play their role. At least now we have structures in all the dioceses of Uganda. So even if you are to mobilize anything, whether for education, for what, to speak one voice, at least we have got the structures today in all the dioceses in Uganda. Number two, we are having certain common grounds we are exploiting, and we do really submit them to government whenever we get that chance, so that we are able to bring back the role and the full mandate and other issues. In the interest of time, of course, we shall not be able to finalize.
In the interest of time,
Yes.
I really need you to speak to a viewer out there. How can they be accountable of themselves and know that this whole thing of faith is not only to priests and the religious?
Thank you very much. As a final note, one, we are the Great Commission did not concern priests only. The Great Commission in the last chapter of Matthew, which states that go out and make disciples. It was to everyone, and the later part of the church. So, ladies and gentlemen, you, the laity outside there, as I said, you are 99.99%. Play your role in the family, play your role in your parish, play your role in your diocese, play your role in your country, in politics, in economics, in everything. Therefore, following that, we shall be able to rise where we want to be. And don't expect anyone to play that role, simply say, you people out there, do it, do it. Nobody's going to do it for you. It is you and I to create the discipleship and to be the light and the salt of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anthony. Thank you for coming through, and thank you for accepting to share all this with us and also the viewers. Dear viewer, thank you for keeping it UCTV. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thank you. Is it? Thank you very much, Paul.
Did you exhaust what you wanted to speak about?
UCTV. Good.